Hello and welcome to Belonging by Design, Inclusive Classroom PBIS in Action, presented by Patty Shetter and Julie Murdaugh. I'm Sarah Lincoln, a SIP Program Specialist, and I am thrilled to be your moderator for this breakout session. First, a few logistics. This session will be recorded and archived on the conference agenda page after the conference for 1 month. Closed captioning is available by clicking on the CC button on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. The interpretation icon is in the same area. It will provide access to Spanish translation. We will ensure the ASL interpreters are spotlighted along with the PowerPoint and presenter. Please ensure your volume is muted to avoid background distractions while presenters speak. We encourage you to engage with others in the chat, and when possible, keep your cameras on so we can see your faces. And with that, Patty and Julie, I'll turn it over to you two.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for choosing our session this morning on Belonging by Design, Inclusive PBIS in Action. My name is Patty Shetter, and I'm joined by Julie Murdaugh. Today, we are coordinators for social, emotional, behavioral supports with the Placer County Office of Education. In our session today, we have 3 objectives. We want to help you understand how classroom PBIS practices can help to support student inclusion, belonging, access, engagement, and identity. We're going to help you analyze classroom PBIS practices using an inclusion and belonging lens to evaluate support for student voice, dignity, and equitable participation. And we're hoping that you walk away able to at least get started applying 3 or more proactive classroom-based PBIS strategies. We want to start today by doing a little bit of a self-reflection. And we'd invite you to think of a situation or context where you felt really included, like you really belonged, versus maybe a time in your life when you felt a little out of place. So hold those 2 situations in your thoughts for just a minute. And if you would, name some things either in the chat, or if you'd like to come off of mute, we love to hear live voices. What were some of the things that were in place that helped you feel that sense of belonging? What were some things that helped you belong? I see someone put in the chat, respect.
And just a reminder, the home-based doc is in the chat as well. And if you need to access any of that, it's there. What else? What else was in place that helped you feel, oh, here we go, Patty, they're rolling in.
When somebody says they love you anyways.
Oh.
Being invited to share an option or weigh in. Yeah, having some voice. Being given an opportunity to express yourselves, being welcomed through greetings. What else helps you feel a sense of belonging? Openness and non-judgment.
Thinking back to a time, good.
And then thinking about the time where maybe you felt a little awkward or out of place. What were some things that made you feel that way? I know for me, I feel a little awkward and out of place when I'm not really sure what's expected, or when what I thought I was walking into ends up being different than what it really was. Does that make anybody else feel like they don't belong? Great. Well, we're going to be talking about PBIS today, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, which will start out just by laying the foundation of what PBIS is and how it relates to belonging and inclusion. So PBIS is a framework for enhancing the adoption and implementation of a continuum of evidence-based interventions that improve outcomes for all students. And it improves outcomes not just in social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes, but also helps to set the foundation for student engagement and academic improvement. But the most important outcome that PBIS can really set the stage for is the outcome of a sense of belonging within a school and a classroom community. And a lot of people don't really think about that as being part of PBIS. So our challenge today is to help you think about ways in which implementing these PBIS strategies actually encourages and lays the foundation for belonging and inclusion. So what does the research say about belonging? Well, it indicates that students feel belonging when they are seen and respected. They also feel a greater sense of belonging when they're in predictable and safe environments, where they feel connected with others, where they have an opportunity for voice and participation, and where strong relationships can be developed so that they feel like they're a part of that community. PBIS is the system that really makes all of those things possible. PBIS helps to build relationships, it provides predictability, and it creates a positive climate. And we know these are all core drivers of that sense of belonging. So the relationships, the predictability, and the positive climates lay that foundation for any student to really feel a part of their classroom and school community. I'm going to hand it over to Julie now, who's going to talk to you about the core features of classroom PBIS.
So when we're looking at that nature of belonging, we know that those elements are there for the school-wide systems and school-wide processes that we have in place at our schools. But we also know that the majority of time for students is spent in the classroom. So these are those core features of classroom PBIS. You'll see them listed there. Those are the 8 heavy hitters, as we call them, for classroom. They're also referenced on walkthrough tools. There's a variety of those, but we're going to really look at the ones in bold today. So relationships, we're going to talk about the importance of routines and expectations, as well as multi-layered acknowledgement systems. Go ahead, Patty. Patty's going to do my slides for me. So when we're talking about school-wide versus classroom PBIS, there are some similarities and differences that we want to point out. So when we take a look at the pieces that are school-wide, we know that includes our expectations, our procedures that encourage and acknowledge those expected SEB skills. We also know how important it is to have a procedure to discourage or to respond to any of those behaviors that are contextually inappropriate. So not necessarily bad, we're not labeling bad behaviors, we're not making judgments, but we're just saying in the context of school, these are the behaviors we expect to see. Likewise, on that classroom side, we have some pieces that are present. We align our expectations with the school-wide expectations. We build relationships. We design to be inclusive. And then we teach routines, have praise. We supervise. We have relevant instruction, and we have that data. So we want you to look at that middle section there. They both emphasize those pieces in the middle. Correction, consistent reinforcement and correction. Sorry, Patty, I went a little fast. And then also the data-driven decision-making. So in our session today, we wanted to take a deeper dive on these 3 pieces here. So we're going to take a deep dive into relationships, and those are defined here as those deliberate practices that strengthen those those teacher, student, peer, and family connections. These are really shown to improve resilience, engagement, and positive behavior. We're going to dive into those expectations and routines, where we teach expectations and routines to ensure that students know that what is expected of them, they feel confident, and they are more likely to succeed. We cannot make any assumptions with our expectations. And then we have acknowledgement system. We know the importance of recognizing others for those behaviors that we want to see and that we want to ensure that we are paying attention to those, recognizing those, and help students feel seen and included. Okay. The first one we're going to dig into is the relationships piece. We have something fun for you today in just a moment. When we get into relationships, we want to really emphasize that we know the importance of this quote. No significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. Everything we do with students really hinges upon that safety and security, which is supported through our relationships. Oh, I love it. Someone said connection before correction. That is right. Thank you, Reed. So as we go into the relationship section, we're going to give you the reasons behind why we do those things. And we know that when students feel seen, valued, heard, known, respected, that it does these things for them. And we have the reference down at the bottom where this came from. We want to know that those relationships boost motivation, participation, supports resiliency, self-regulation. It's affirming. We have all kinds of students that come to us, variety of cultural and language identities, right? Lots of different pieces that go into our students, variety of learning abilities, and a variety of strategies that work for different types of students. So we want to honor their differences, and we want to make sure that we strengthen our homeschool partnerships. We do not do this work alone. We do this work in partnerships with our families. And we want to ultimately reduce those disruptions and those office discipline referrals. So as we look at the strategies for building relationships, we're going to ask you to do a little bit of a vote. So you're going to need your chat feature right now. So find that. We're going to give you an option to dive into one of these today. You have access to all of them, but we want to know, do you want the 2x10? Do you want to know what that is? Do you want to hear about an activity called My Name, My Identity? Do you want to do positive greetings at the door or anywhere? Positive greetings can happen anywhere. Or do you want to learn a little more about community circles? So what we're going to ask you to do right now is go into your chat, give us a 1 if you want 2x10. Just do them in order, 1 down to 4. 2 is My Name, My Identity. 3 is positive greetings and community circles. They're rolling in. Patty's going to help me determine which one we're going to be looking at.
Julie, I'm seeing lots of 1s and lots of 4s.
Okay,
do you think
lots of
you have
ones.
time? Do you think you
Ooh.
have time to do?
Hopefully we will. Let's
Okay.
shoot for those. We'll get started.
All
Patty
right.
will keep me on
It's
track
a
with
it's a
time.
dead heat. It's a dead
Okay.
heat between 1 and 4.
All right, I'm passionate about both of those, so let's hit it. 2x10. So 2x10 is a very simple strategy. We have resources for all of these on your home-based doc, but 2x10 is very simple. We really focus on spending 2 minutes a day for 10 school days in a row, talking with and connecting with a student about something other than school performance. So oftentimes you might see a student who's wearing a special kind of shoe or a sweatshirt with a logo on it. Maybe they share their favorite sports team. Maybe you know something about this student because you had their sibling. We encourage educators and all staff that work with students to focus on this intervention 2 minutes a day, 10 school days in a row, having a casual conversation with that student about things that are not academic. Really nice way to connect with students, way to make them feel seen, valued, and heard. That's about them as a person. And then also allows us to really think about who are the students who maybe don't have as much of that positive interaction with an adult. Where could we really spend that time? As a previous teacher, I know that there were kids that were coming to me at the beginning of a year, and I knew some things about them from the previous year. Maybe I was getting that student for a specific reason. I knew that I needed to really dive into that relationship. This is an opportunity to do that. So 2x10, really simple strategy. There are some resources on our home-based doc. We give you sort of some sentence starters like, okay, this sounds great, but how do you want me to do it? So we give you some tips and tricks for this strategy. Patty, did I miss anything?
So I can tell a little bit of a story about when I found this to be incredibly successful as a classroom teacher. I had a student that I was supporting who was neurodivergent. They were on the autism spectrum, and they had some particular interests that weren't necessarily appropriate to share during classroom time with the whole group, but they were very appropriate to share one-on-one in an adult conversation. And so the 2x10 helped me to be able to learn more about this passion and interest that he had that maybe his other peers weren't necessarily as interested in, or maybe wasn't appropriate for a conversation with other second graders. And just to be able to just form that connection with him. And so it was actually about the national parks and the ones that he had been to, and all of the things that he had seen. And his particular passion and interest was the types of trees. So I learned that he was an expert on this and had so much knowledge and information about trees because of his national park visits and experience. Probably could have grown up to be a park ranger very easily. Knowing that about him then, when it was appropriate, I could offer him the floor and an opportunity to share this immense knowledge and this passion that he had with his peers. So it was a way of being able to include him and involve him, but really to connect with him about something that was super meaningful to him.
Yeah, and Patty, thank you for sharing that. So the other thing that I thought about is how you could take the information learned in 2x10 and apply it to other behavior supports or social emotional supports you might need to put in place for that student. So perfect example from Patty was the student who liked trees. So if we wanted to do any sort of behavior support that involved token boards or learning or earning time to do investigation on the computer, we could incorporate trees into that to make it a positive connection that you have. And there was a comment in the chat about a student, I think, loving dinosaurs and talking about the love of dinosaurs. I talk a lot about that outside of the classroom. So thank you for sharing that, Reed. We appreciate your participation in the chat. All right, we're going to skip through. So my name, my identity, we don't have time to get into it, but there's great resources here. It just really honors every student's name and where it comes from. We incorporate the family in that. We're going to skip through that really quick. The next one is these are resources that you could have. These for my name, my identity, those are also in your home-based doc. So we're going to skip through to the next one. Greetings at the door, super easy to learn. We'll let you investigate that one on your own. So we'll go through these slides real quick. Patty's just going to fast forward through those. Keep going, Patty. There's a video there you can watch later. One more. All right. The other one you wanted to hear about was community circles. I love community circles. I did them as a teacher. I did them as a coordinator. I did them as a coach and as a principal. I ran them with my staff. So community circles, very, very powerful. They actually come from Native American culture all the way back. So it's really nice because it can anchor us back to some indigenous practices if that's appropriate for where you are. Circles are intentional dialogue spaces. They are used proactively. We don't do this with kids to put anyone on the spot or make anyone uncomfortable. Especially when we're first using circles, we ensure that they are done in that positive, proactive way, and it builds community within the classroom. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, or what are we doing when we're doing circles? We are practicing these elements here. Shows a tremendous sign of respect, equality. In a circle, there's no leader. You should be able to see every person. We develop this emotional literacy as well as empathy, especially if someone shares something that's sensitive. There's some ground rules when you do circles. You can do problem solving. It's a great place to take responsibility and ownership. So circles are a beautiful place where social emotional learning naturally comes to the surface, right? When we ask students to share using their voice, it gives them a sense of self-regulation, self-awareness. Hey, I am a person. I have a voice. I have a presence. I have thoughts. And look, all these people care about those. And so look at the position I sit in my classroom, in my community. And then there's shared leadership. You don't always have to start with the educator. The person in the circle that can share first can often be a volunteer. It can be a student that wants to be a student leader. There's lots of ways to use these to teach some SEB skills as well as develop your sense of community. So the next one, we do want to show you this quick video. There, the teacher here is showing the use of a talking piece. So community circles, a really important piece of community circles is having a talking piece, and that signals to the students that there's one person talking during that time and that we show respect by allowing that person to have the floor. All right, Patty's going to show
it just fosters, the way the kids care for each other. It builds empathy amongst the children.
How do you feel about community circles?
I love it. It was kind of hard to get started, but once you get in the routine of it, it's really good. We start our morning every single morning with community circle, and if we don't get to it, they will tell you we forgot to do community circle, and we have to stop and sit down and start our community circle. So it's been a really good thing.
If you earned your own income, if you had your own money to spend however you wanted to spend it, what would you spend your money on? What would you buy? Remember, put your thumb on your knee if you can think of something. If I had my own money, I would buy
an OC card. I'll buy the cutest thing in the world. I would buy dance shoes. I really like community circles because I get to learn about other people and I get to learn about what they do. I like it because I get to learn a lot about other people.
I love community circles. As a teacher, I think it's preventative maintenance for classroom management and allows kids to be a part of the solution when an issue does arise. And then personally, I love building relationships with my students, and you get to know them better.
It helps me know people more.
You feel like you know more about your friends than you do when you don't have community circles.
When I'm feeling down, I like to watch funny memes.
I watch Vines when I'm feeling down.
I like listening to my favorite songs. Skip.
I just use my imagination, hang out with my friends, and draw. Yes.
Okay. You should know because my last name is Joy.
Okay, quick little video. I know you might have some questions. We do have opportunity for Q&A at the end, but I do want to get through the next portion so Patty can give you the rest of these great things. I put a couple things in the chat for considerations. Take a look at those. One more slide. Oh, I did want to ask for those of you that want to participate in the chat, if you could answer the question on that screen there. What are some ways that circles contribute to positive PBIS outcomes, such as increased engagement and inclusion? So as I'm doing the next part, we'll have you guys answer in there, and we'll call out some of those that we see. So Patty, do you want to go to the next slide, and then we'll kind of wait. So the beauty of our presentation today is we give you lots of resources. So we've created some one-pagers. These come out of a classroom series that we teach at Placer County Office of Education called Classroom Playbook. These are available for you on the home base document. So you get a one-pager on what are relationships, what are positive relationships, and some of those are listed in there, like the ones we modeled for you today. We also are providing you a self-assessment tool. Part of our job as educators, whether we're teachers or classified staff, is to really make sure that we are looking at our own practices and doing more of what we know is best practice and what works and creates positive outcomes. So that was your section on relationships. I'm going to hand it back over to Patty, and she's going to get us into expectations and routines.
Great. Thank you, Julie. So one of those core features of classroom PBIS that Julie just went over was building relationships, and the 4 strategies are available for you to explore and choose from. The circle strategy that was just mentioned, there were a couple things in the chat that I thought were worth pointing out before we move on. One of them was Kelly contributed that students who don't communicate with words can have an opportunity to still participate in circles through their AAC device. So if you're a teacher and you're in an inclusive environment and you know you have students who communicate using AAC or with alternative methods, providing them with the prompt ahead of time and allowing them an opportunity to share something through AAC, or incorporating some visuals, pointing to some of the things that you might be sharing or discussing in the circle, having them just point to a picture of something that relates for them. Can be a way of increasing inclusivity and making sure that they have an opportunity to belong as part of that topic and a part of that routine within those circles. Thank you for contributing those suggestions. All right, so relationships are the foundation of all good classroom positive behavior support and classroom management. The next layer that we want to make sure is built into PBIS in the classroom are creating clear and consistent expectations and routines. This is what creates those safe and predictable environments for all students. So think about a typical classroom day for any student. They might be a primary student, but as a primary student, they spend time in the classroom. Maybe they spend time on the playground. Maybe they spend time in the library. They spend time in the cafeteria. An older student, they may be switching classes every hour and have 7 different classrooms in the hallway and the cafeteria and the locker room to contend with. So how many different rules do you guys think a student has to keep track of in any given school day? Put your guesses in the chat there. How many rules do you think they have to keep track of? Kelly says 25. Any other guesses? 15, 20, 200. Lisa says 200. You probably work with older students, and I would venture to guess you're probably pretty close to right on middle school and high school. All right, there's an average of about 27 rules in a primary classroom and even more in a secondary campus that students need to keep track of on any given day. So if you think of 30 rooms on a campus, they might have 150 rules come those secondary age spans. So rather than having 150 different rules by however many teachers or adults a student comes in contact with, in PBIS, we try to focus on 3 to 5 very clearly defined expectations that cross all contexts and settings. And having 3 to 5 expectations that every adult on campus is really teaching and referencing and reinforcing helps our students to be able to understand what those mean in the different environments. So it really reduces the cognitive load of having to try to keep track of 150 different ones. Now I just have to know 3 to 5 different expectations. Every adult on a campus reiterates them using the same or similar language. So they're not hearing things in 15 different ways. If the expectations are to be safe, to be respectful, and to be responsible, they're hearing those same cues and those same expectations, regardless of if they're in the hallway or in the cafeteria or in the classroom. And when they're being acknowledged for following the expectations, they're hearing, I like the way you were safe in the hallway by using your walking feet. I like the way that you were helpful in the cafeteria, showing your friend where to sit. So it's that core language that's being used and acknowledged across the day. When paired with clear expectations of those 3 to 5 expectations in a variety of ways, our students tend to learn them and engage in them and have a sense of understanding of what's expected much more quickly. So in the classroom, the expectations for the classroom should be linked to those 3 to 5 school-wide expectations. There shouldn't be a different set of language and rules that are going on in the classroom as are happening outside of the classroom. But they need to be defined for the classroom context and within each routine. So that's a core feature of classroom PBIS is linking to those school-wide expectations, teaching them in ways that are meaningful to each student, and then embedding them within each of those classroom routines. We also want to make sure that we're designing the expectations in ways that are neurodiversity affirming. And I'll give you some examples and some non-examples. So less neurodiversity affirming expectations might be pay attention, sit still, and have quiet bodies. Now, having those expectations of some learners is going to be very exclusive. They may find it really hard to follow those expectations. So we want to think about the expectations that are more neurodiversity affirming, such as use your tools and strategies that help you learn. Keep your body and materials in your space, and allow others to learn. So you're engaging in respect in the classroom by allowing others to learn how they need to learn and using the tools and resources that they need to be able to learn. So it's important when you're thinking about translating those school-wide expectations to the classroom to think about your learners and define them and teach them in ways that really are respectful of who they are and what they need in the classroom environment. Once those expectations are identified, then we want to translate them into how they look within the different routines and during different different transitions within the classroom. So this is an example of a behavior matrix that has the 4 expectations across the top: stay safe, own your actions, act respectfully, and be ready to learn. And you see the little acronym is SOAR because it coincides with the mascot for that school site, which I believe was an eagle. And then down the left-hand side are the different routines that might be happening within that classroom day. So during transitions, what it means to be safe is to walk forward, to own your actions might be to use the appropriate level of voice. To be respectful is to line up quietly during the transition. And to be ready to learn is to have your materials ready or with you. Teaching expectations. It's not just about telling what the expectations are. It's about teaching every learner how to use them. And this can be designed universally so that every student has an opportunity to see it, hear it, discuss it, and try it. So we have a variety of different strategies for teaching expectations, things like using hand motions, visuals, videos, demonstrations, examples, using things like music and repetition that helps them learn it through hearing it, discussing it either in groups or in partnership, and then trying it through practice. When we teach the expectations with learner variability in mind and adding all of those universal design for learning elements, you can see a variety of different examples here. For Be Kind, students were able to draw pictures of what each of those expectations meant for them and add their artwork and add their expression, some of them in words, some of them in pictures, about what it meant to them to be responsible, to show self-control. The middle example is some guided notes that the teacher took as they were having the conversations and discussions about the classroom norms. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? So teaching them using a variety of different means of representation. Here are some examples of visual depictions of the expectations. On the left-hand side, you've got morning lineup. The photo on the left is the non-example. This is what it does not look like when we're lining up in the morning. And on the right-hand side is what it should look like. On the swing example, the left is the red choice or non-example. The right is the green choice or the expected behavior, the example of how to actually do it. So sometimes our students need to be able to learn to discriminate between what is the expected behavior and what an example of what it wouldn't look like is. When we teach expectations, it's also really important to recognize and know that these expectations are also for the adults in the environment. So if the PBIS expectations are safe, respectful, responsible, the adults need to follow those same expectations. So creating safe learning environments where all students feel that they belong is a responsibility of the adults. Be respectful of student needs, communication styles, learner variation, and responses to the environment, and being responsible for teaching and acknowledging social, emotional, behavioral skills and expectations and providing positive corrections. So those expectations are not just for students, they're for the adults as well. We want to make sure that we're teaching them as well as those safe, predictable routines. So thinking about the routines within the classroom and making sure that there's consistency and predictability in those, and using universal design for learning principles when we go about teaching them. On the right-hand side, you see a great example of a predictable way of communicating the expectations through the visual support. So you've got the objective, the homework, and the expectation of being responsible and what that looks like during that assignment. These are some ways of adding some visual elements to the routines and expectations of jobs. And having student-guided schedules that provide that concrete representation of what they're doing, when they're doing it, and what happens next. Also, as part of classroom PBIS in creating those safe, predictable environments, we want to encourage students to learn to self-manage. So there are a variety of different ways that can be done in the classroom through visual supports, timers, first, then language and structuring, and you can see some examples of those here. We've got those great resources for you for classroom expectations that you can access in the resources section, and a little self-reflection checklist for how you might go about implementing them as well. And Julie's going to go back then to wrap up the final piece that we're presenting to you today, and that's about student acknowledgement.
Yes, and before I get into that, I did want to call out that there was a question in the chat around circles for older students, so I put some tips in there about helping students not to socialize during circle. And then there was a call out, Patty, about the similarities between PBIS and the California Teaching Pyramid. And we get that actually quite a bit at our county office. So thanks for calling that out, Desiree. And then we call it class family promise. So Catalina shared that as well. So very nice. Thank you for sharing that in the chat. All right, Patty brought us in with expectations and routines. Let's talk through acknowledgement. We feel like acknowledgement is very, very important. We want to call out that it is not the same as bribery. We hear that sometimes, and bribery is really telling somebody you're going to give them something if they do a thing. This is not that. We believe that every human wants to be acknowledged, meaning they want to be recognized when they are doing the social norms that are appropriate, right? And if we are recognizing these and we are acknowledging these behaviors, we will get more of those. So you'll see here two little people with high fives. We're going to get into acknowledgement. Important piece to call out is that this is good for the brain. We wanted to point out the connection between acknowledgement and the brain. Think about, I close my eyes for a second, think about a time you've been acknowledged as I walk you through these three pieces and how that felt to you. So that dopamine, that reward circuit in the brain, when students receive that feedback, the brain actually reduces a chemical called dopamine. This actually activates parts of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex and the nucleus accumbens, for those of us that have heard that terminology before. This reinforces the brain and says, do it again, do it again, do it again, right? The brain wants more of that. We also are activating those learning pathways when we provide that praise. So when we do it specific, when we do it in a timely manner, it impacts and positively gives portions, those pathways are activated in that brain. It says their hippocampus hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. You don't need to worry about that terminology. Just know that we want the brain to remember that. And so we're having the giving acknowledgement and providing that feedback creates those pathways in the brain. And then look at the last one. It really helps with safety. When learners feel safe and recognized, they feel seen, right? The amygdala actually stays calm and reduces that cortisol and allows the brain, the learning, rational part of the brain, that ready to learn state, it actually engages it. So this is not just a feel good. There's research and there's brain science that tells us we need it and why it feels good to do it. We also know that there is research supporting there's actual behavior theory and relational theory. So a little bit more around that these pieces are rooted in science. So the principles of reinforcement, as well as using teaching to give us new skills, and then also reinforcement is used intermittently to maintain the learned skills so they keep happening. So behavior theory tells us, do it, do more of it. And then the relational theory tells us it's about relationships, right? When someone sees you, when they value you, when they validate you, it creates a bond with that person and it creates a strengthened relationship there. In PBIS specifically, we want to call out that this includes behavior-specific praise at those high rates. You might see 5-to-1. I'm actually going to show you a slide in a second that says we can up it, especially for any students who might have any learning challenges or need extra time to learn something. So we want those behavior-specific praise happening at that 5-to-1. Acknowledgement is a piece of that. We often can include, when we give acknowledgements, a token or a ticket, but we want to be really careful. This is just the reinforcement. The acknowledgement that we're calling out is actually any of that communication and the words that are given to the student to acknowledge the behavior. It isn't about the tangible item. It's actually about what is said or what is communicated to the child or the student. And then we want all staff across all settings and routines to be using acknowledgement. Lunchroom behavior, classroom behaviors, all of them, bus behaviors, right? We want to make sure our students are being acknowledged in all of those places. We want to, as often as we can, pair behavior-specific praise, which is a way we do acknowledgement, with visuals. We want to help link the action or the skill to the outcome. It alleviates any confusion about why acknowledgement is given, right? We don't just want to say something like, good job. We want to say, thank you for throwing your tissue away. That was very responsible, while we point to the responsible icon. It also can help students become acknowledgement can become the way that the students use self-talk as they progress in learning, okay? So again, we wanted to provide that example and that non-example. Patty, I think we can show that. Do you want to show that real quick video there? I don't know if it came up or not. That should show us how to pair.
So we have gestures for being safe, be responsible, and being kind, so that all students have access to sharing information through whatever communication means they have. So it's be safe, be responsible, and be kind. Cool. I love it.
Okay, so just a quick way to show that those can be linked to those icons. Okay, I told you a minute ago that we see 5-to-1 a lot of times, but we actually want to also show you this piece of data here that states that 9-to-1 is actually the ratio we want to have, or the rate of acknowledgement and behavior-specific praise that we want to have for specifically middle school students, anyone who is at risk, or students with disabilities. So that positive to corrective needs to be closer to that 9-to-1. Couple little tricks people do. I've seen teachers put a little icon that just has 9-to-1 on a little Post-it note, and they put it up on their clock or on their wall. They have it somewhere to remind themselves if that's something that they want to focus on. Or they're listening for their own language to catch themselves if they've been in that corrective mode for a little bit too long. But we want to point out 9 to 1, really important for those specific groups of students. I'm raising 2 middle schoolers right now. I'm living 9 to 1. Creating your acknowledgement system, really important. I told you earlier that it is a key piece to have multiple layers of acknowledgement. So we often encourage individual points, which are when we give the students individual ways to earn. This can be done also in private. It could be just giving it to the student. It could be that ticket or that point. And then we also encourage group points and class points. So group points are maybe for table groups or groups of students who are working together, whether that's their permanent seating or in stations. Really important to do that. Table points can be used or earned towards a common goal, which is often fun. And then class points are earned for overall acknowledgement for the class. So we would do this oftentimes when I taught 4th grade. We did this in when there was a substitute, they could earn their letters for extra recess. Again, earning, not taking away. So variations of points can be your levels of acknowledgement system there. So now it's time to hear from you. What are various ways you use acknowledgement systems in your classroom, in your teaching environment? We put up some examples here. You may have heard of 5-Star or Class Dojo. We've got some middle schools using Minga. Go ahead and tell us in the chat, what are some ways that you do acknowledgement in your classroom? Reward jar, table points, Class Dojo. Yeah, what else do we have? Throw some more ideas in there. Mystery reward. Oh, that sounds fun. Do you see the one on the image too on the right? That's a school-wide one. So oftentimes you can take all of your acknowledgement tickets if you're a ticket system. After the teacher uses them, you put them in this big school-wide acknowledgement bucket or bin or wheel. And as those build up, the whole school gets a reward. So we've seen pajama day, free seating at lunchtime. That's a big deal to kids. Somebody said that they have a class point system called aura points. Cute, for like good aura. Tiger tails, positivity cards, very nice. Yeah, these can also be proactively given, right? Panther paws, lunch bunch, whole class rewards such as an oversized crayon box. And any student can earn a crayon to add. Cute. Post-it picture reveal, a hidden picture cover and post-its with positive behaviors I'm looking for. As I find them, I take them down to reveal the picture. And when they get the picture revealed, they have a party. Lovely. These are all such great examples of ways to do acknowledgement. Thank you for giving those to us in the chat. And this last little piece we want to give you is the same tools we gave you on the others. There's the 1-pager on acknowledgement and reinforcement of the positive behavior, as well as your tool for your self-assessment. Okay, we're right on time, Patty. We're doing great. So the last thing we want to tell you is ultimately all of these things lead to students feeling a sense of belonging. And that is what we want for students. And ultimately, it is so they can have academic achievement. So schools can be a place where it serves them to be the best versions of themselves. So we're going to show you this last little video for a feel good here before we answer any questions.
Go ahead, crank the volume. We got you.
We'll skip that.
First, a word from our sponsors.
In order to teach them about being responsible, respectful, and safe, we've shown some videos, we've done role playing, and we incorporate it into our Sanford Harmony lessons when we can. Last summer, when we decided as a school to revamp our PBIS process, the preschool team really wanted to be a part of that so that we could make sure that our students were included and began that foundation of PBIS, whether they continue at Mariposa or go on to another school. Also, it's important that we're just part of the school and we do the same things that they do, and our children are part of the community and understand what our school culture is.
I've learned to do something kind for others and just care less about myself and more about other people. It made Recess a better school because now a lot of kids are more kind now and they have humor, they talk with each other, and they make new friends. The buddy bench is when if you don't have anybody to hang out with, you go sit down and somebody will ask you to play with them. I was playing on the monkey bars and I saw somebody that went to go sit down and I asked them, do you want to play on the monkey bars with us? Because I had some friends that were playing with me too.
We love to do Harmony every single morning. We'll try and do a meetup. And so we'll talk about what is their favorite food. We'll do an activity. We'll share something.
We have these things here called the 4Bs. Be respectful, be responsible, be safe, and be kind. You have to follow all those expectations at the school to be a cool coyote. And if you do, you'll get a little slip that you put in a basket and you could take a picture with the principal and other students that are acting as great as you.
The teachers help you make good choices by saying try your best and good job. They want you to be respectful, responsible, and safe.
At Norte, PAUSE stands for practicing respect, acting responsibly, working together, and safety matters.
PAUSE stands for practice respect, and the A stands for act responsibly, W is work together, and S stands for safety matters. They could do the P for practicing respect, and not and doing that to other people, because that would make them be sad.
To earn one of the 3Bs, we have to be respectful, responsible, and be safe.
The way they taught us to do the right behavior is role-playing, where we'll get into a group and we'll get assigned a good behavior and we'll role-play it in front of the class.
Students feel that they're viewed positively, it builds their self-worth, they work harder, they learn better, and they like coming to school.
Okay, we wanted to remind you that that video can be found on the home-based document. Thank you so much today. We want to open up for any questions and answers. You feel free to come off of chat if you have one that you would like us to do live. If not, feel free to put those in the chat and we'll keep answering them.
I have a feeling we also have some folks in the room, because I recognize a few of them, who are doing really great PBIS implementation and would love to know the ways in which you've seen PBIS increase inclusion and belonging on your campuses or in your classrooms. If you have stories to share or insights that you'd like to share with the group, because I know I see some experts in here. Any questions?
Any questions? I'm checking the chat. I don't see.
I loved this session. We just went through the PBIS webinar with SIP, and I learned more again. This was incredible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions?
And you are welcome to unmute if you do have a question.
And just a reminder, there are other classroom practices listed in that list of 8 that are equally important as the 3 we went over today. So we encourage you to take a look at all of those. We really appreciate you being here. We're both very passionate about this topic and this work. We both have worked in special education as well as general education, and feel passionately that these practices really make a difference for students and their families. There are session resources for you, as you know. They can be found at that tiny URL, and if that is not your preference, we gave it to you in a QR code also. Just reminding you, we are Patty Shetter and Julie Murdaugh from Placer County Office of Education, both coordinators with social emotional behavior supports.
And Julie, do you want to put our emails in the chat? So if people think of questions afterwards, I'd also encourage you all to go check out the National PBIS Center website. They have an entire section dedicated to supporting students with disabilities and neurodivergent students, and how to adapt and include them within PBIS. I think a lot of times we think just because a student has a learning difference that they can't participate or that it's not appropriate for them to participate in PBIS. And we found exactly the opposite to be true. They benefit even more by making sure that we're being inclusive and teaching them the expectations and including them in all of the school-wide and classroom-wide systems and acknowledgments and things as every other student. That's how we create their sense of inclusion and belonging, is by making sure we as the adults are doing the things to really design the systems to meet their needs and to include them in those systems.
Patty or Julie, could you add the website you just mentioned about the National PBIS? It was a question in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you. And with that, I think we're going to close today. Thank you, Patty and Julie, and thank you to everyone here today for your continued commitment to students with disabilities and their families. Our shared mission is to design an educational system that innovates, elevates, and creates a meaningful, positive experience for all learners from early childhood and beyond. You can access the slides for this presentation in the session description on the VFAIR's agenda page. If you have additional questions, please visit the information booth. You may find the answers you're looking for there. Be sure to join us in all the activities for the rest of the day. Also connect with other attendees in the social lounge and stop to take a selfie in the photo booth. Don't forget to share on your socials and tag @SIPImpact with the hashtag SIPCon2026. Remember, at the end of the event, the top attendees on our leaderboard will receive their pick between an inclusive book bundle or free registration for one person to one of the following upcoming conferences: MTSS PLI in Anaheim, July 14th through the 16th, or the CalXC Symposium in Burlingame, October 20th to 21st. Thank you, everybody.